welcome or welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Noah, your favorite financial analyst, and I wanted to welcome all of you here today to this week's installment of Monologue Monday here on my YouTube channel. For those of you who do not know, Monologue Monday is a series that I created where I discuss different aspects of everyday life that kind of tie in to finance in some way, shape, or form, and I basically share my opinions on all of these subjects. For this week's episode, I thought it would be a wise decision to sort of talk about the best ways that yourself as a viewer can spend money throughout the calendar year. And I thought this would be really appropriate because we have Christmas right around the corner and then the new year following right after that. So with that being said, let's get into this episode of Monologue Monday. So let's begin. Let's try to articulate the best way that I personally believe you as an individual, as a viewer, and myself and friends and so on should be spending money throughout the year, throughout the different celebrations that occur, birthdays and, holidays. Like Christmas is a perfect example where people's expenses tend to shoot up, because they're buying gifts and they're going to events and they're getting, they're getting wine and, all of these different things. And I kind of want to, open it up, by stating that there, even though, our goal here, my goal with AFA is to try to save people as much money as possible so they can use it for, financial planning and, other life events and so on. There's no way that we're going to run away from expenses, right? So even if, example would be, even if you wanted to go out to the middle of nowhere, and live off the land and, have your own foraging area and so on, you would buy the land, but you would still need to pay taxes on that land, as time went on. So there's really no way of getting out of, getting out of some form of payment, right? And you can, the extreme would be if you just ran out and lived on someone else's land, but you better hope that, they don't, they don't come out and shoot you when you're sleeping. So we know that there's no way of getting away from expenses, right? So now the question becomes, what is the way, or what is the best way that I can make my dollars count? What are the best rules that I can follow to ensure that my money's not being wasted, right? So I'm not making frivolous purchases that don't in the long term don't matter, and that's really what is going to drive this this episode of Monologue Monday. Is with kind of the personal experience that I've had in the last 2 or 3 years after completely changing my spending habits. So one of the most important thing, and really the heart of this discussion, I believe, is to purchase goods and services. More so goods, because services are transient, right? It's not tangible usually, but goods are here, right? I have a mouse. This is tangible. And it's going to be around for a while, hopefully. But the point is, or the heart of the conversation here is to buy goods or spend money with the intent of the product, in this case, lasting for the long run. So simply put, this is a quality over quantity affair. We want to purchase goods that are really going to hold value and last for a long period of time. We do not want to, have to keep buying the same thing over and over and over again. And I want to kind of use some personal examples that that have made a huge difference on my life. And I want to bring up probably 3 of them in this video here. But where what I'm talking about now is really, really shown to be true. So one example I want to give before I get into my personal examples is something that I think a lot of individuals can really relate to, because it's such a centralized part of life here in the United States, and that is vehicles. Having your own car. Everybody in the family having their own cars so they can do errands, they can get to work, they can go on trips and so on. So we are heavily reliant on vehicles here in the United States. And I think maybe this is a discussion for a different, Monologue Monday, but I'm not the biggest fan of that. And it's something that I've always found quite irritating, that every single person needs their own vehicle, but that's a conversation for a different time. But the point there, where this kind of leads into the quality over quantity discussion, is that when people get into the buying market for a vehicle, right, it's a pretty large expense, comparative to shoes and clothes. I mean, hopefully, right? Um, Hopefully, it's one of the more expensive ones you have. But what people like to do is see that because they're already going to be spending a decent sum, they want to try to cut as many corners as they can to to save on that purchase, right? So, take for example, maybe um, a not so good or a shitty, domestic car, right? A sedan, for example, and then you take something that, was built overseas. The same, same seating arrangement, same speeds, and all of same interior and so on. And the price tags will be probably, they could be upwards of, eight or $10,000 difference, right, between the two vehicles. And you might say, I think a lot of people will just look at that and say, well, they're the same thing. I'm just going to buy the cheaper one, and then I'll save this money, right? I'll save, that 8,000. I mean, it'd be probably more, right, because you're financing, but that's kind of besides the point. But what they don't consider is all of the issues that might be kind of, linked to the cheaper car. And I'm personally very passionate about the engineering that kind of goes into vehicles, and how some are just so much more superior than others, and the price is only slightly more if you think of it in the long term. And that's really what this is about. So if I think a lot of people, go down this path and they'll buy the cheaper car because it's the cheaper option and they want to save money. But what they don't see is long term, the amount of money that you'd have to spend on maintenance and things that go wrong, and all of those different things. You're going to save so much more money spending the premium price, for the more expensive version right now. Now, this isn't always true, right? Because you could make an argument where, you know, if you have two cars, maybe you have a $30,000, Toyota sedan or whatever, and then you have a $50,000 BMW. By this logic, someone could say, well, Noah told me to buy the more expensive one. The BMW is the better option, and this is completely false, right? So I don't know, how much everybody knows, but BMWs, their value is depreciates it's some of the fastest depreciation in all vehicles, and there's a good reason for that, is because they just don't last. Um, so in that case, right, you'd want to do a little bit more research on what you're purchasing to make sure that you're getting the best value for your dollar. In this case, if you're looking for a vehicle that is going to last decades potentially, right, with little maintenance on a yearly basis, you'd be an absolute idiot to buy the BMW. Unfortunately, this is something that I see, with a lot of people that, I know on social media and so on, where, everybody likes to post the new vehicles that they've purchased to show achievement and so on. And this is no slight to any of that by any means. But it's, when you really look into, all of the supporting data that's been provided, by different mechanics online, and what they write about and how they talk about, working on different vehicles, the consensus is, there are very clear winners of what are actually better vehicles over a long period of time. So I'm not personally in this boat right now. I actually don't even have a car. I have a car to my name, but it's not insured. It's going to be sold soon. I don't have a vehicle. But if I would, if I would want to buy one, this is something that I think is absolutely crucial to understand, because the amount of money that you're going to save in the long run is going to be, astronomical if you make the smart purchase right from the get-go, even if it is, $5, $8, $10,000 more. Another example that's more personal, that's something that I've, really experienced hands-on is something that is usually hiding in the background of my at my other studio. It's not here currently, but it's a red piece of equipment that kind of lingers in the background, and this is my tennis racket stringer. And I'm not going to go into all of the details about all of that, even though it's something that I could make a video on just in itself. But the long story short is that there's multiple types of tennis racket stringers. There's manual ones, which are done by hand or by weight, and then there's electric stringers, which is what I have. The price differential between electric and non-electric is 300%, 400%, 500%, so it is pretty much night and day. And as someone could easily say, well, Noah, the non-electric stringer, right, is $300, and you have an electric stringer that was, well, it was about $1,900. If they both string a racket, why would you do the electric one? What's the difference in putting in a little bit more work? And that is a question that I asked myself. So at the time, when I was kind of jumping or wavering between one or the other, do I save money and then have a hand, a manual stringer, or do I spend the premium and do I have the electric one? After, doing quite a bit of research, I found that, and personal research, not just research online, but I found that the manual stringers did not produce a accurate stringing tension. And like I said, I don't want to go into all the details. It's kind of like if you know, you know. So if you're a tennis player, you know that if your racket is strung at a different tension than what you need it to be, it is absolutely detrimental to your game. So this is what manual stringers were basically doing. So this was a huge issue that I foresaw that I didn't really want to deal with. And the other thing that I considered was, well, despite the fact that this electric stringer, the one that I have, is 1900, how long would it take, if I just were not to get a stringer at all, if I just kept stringing my rackets at a tennis shop, how long would that take to pay off? And, I'm not going to go into all of the math, but it basically came down to about 2.5 or 3 years, depending on how many times I strung my racket every month. And for me, this is a pretty good investment, right? 2.5 years. So I've already had it nearly a year, and I've strung my rackets. I've strung other people's rackets, which I'm going to get into in just a second here. But the time it takes to basically have the racket pay, or the stringer pay for itself, for me is a pretty minute time, right? 2.5 years is absolutely nothing. So that was one thing that I thought would be, it didn't make sense to basically, have an inaccurate stringer, and then, have it paid off quicker versus a stringer that I knew was doing the correct stringing job and, have it pay itself off in, just over 2 years, perhaps. One of the other things that I considered was the ability to make money on this investment, right? So one thing that I do is I string other people's rackets for them at a rate that's a little bit lower, about 25% lower, 30% lower, sometimes more than what they would have to pay if they went to a tennis shop. So basically this turns out to be, if I'm stringing my rackets and then stringing other people's rackets and they're paying me for it, the stringer itself, the $1,900 pays off even quicker, right? So, and I can promote myself as someone who uses a very accurate stringing machine. It's fully electric. It's got all these different functions, things that just do not exist on manual stringers. So when you start putting, different pieces together in the picture, when you start considering all of the different avenues that might, come about by spending the premium or going for the more advanced option, it becomes very clear that investment is really not too bad if you think about it in the long term. And that's something that I really like to push to people is think of your purchases, not just in the moment. Sometimes you need, a quick fix, right? If it's something very simple like a screwdriver, right? You just need a screwdriver for one day. But if it's things that basically could be somewhat perennial, like a tennis racket stringer, right? I could be using this for years and years and years. The amount that I'm paying now is actually going to save me money, and maybe make me even make me some money down the road as well. One of the other examples, the second personal example that I want to share is basically what I'm looking at right now, the avenue in which you are seeing, my videos here on my YouTube channel. It is my camera that I am recording on. And it was one of those things where I wanted to, I've always been really into video and film. And, with AFA, my company going, I wanted to make a YouTube channel to promote the content, to talk about, different financial topics and so on. So I knew a camera was on the horizon. When I initially started the YouTube channel, I was using my iPhone, which I don't have with me, but it's, 5 years old. So it didn't quite do the job that I needed it to do. And so I figured, well, maybe it's time to get a camera. And instead of, just getting one that was better than my phone, but it was kind of, not as good as, other ones. I really did a lot of research to see, well, where, what are the best ones on the market at this price point, right? So I found, what range I wanted to stay in, because cameras can be tens of thousands of dollars, and that's certainly not something I wanted to do. But thousands of dollars I was kind of okay with, not tens of thousands. And after doing that research, I really honed in on a camera that was on the little bit more of a pricey side. But the way I looked at it was, well, if I buy this camera for this much right now, I won't even have to think about replacing it for this many years, right? It does everything I need to do and more. So there would be no reason to replace it. There's so I don't have to think about well, when it becomes out of style, or when it can't hold to the quality standards of media. Then you kind of get into the replacing, the talks of replacement, right? So I fit the bill basically for the more expensive camera. So this is a full 4K camera. I'm not going to get into all of the specs and so on, but basically it is the long run camera. It will be very useful in years and years and years, because 4K necessarily isn't really going to go out of style anytime soon. So the third and final example that I want to share with you guys today is something that's very similar to the camera. It's the way in which I work, and I do business, and then I run my YouTube channel, and I game and so on. It's my computer, right? So I built my own computer that was basically primarily supposed to be used as a something that I could play games on and work on different projects on and so on. But rather than this is very similar with the camera. Rather than just getting something that does the job, I really considered how long I would like it to last. So that was a huge part of the research, and then I finally landed on something. And of course, it's going to be double or triple what I could have paid for something at lower tier. But what ended up happening was that as I was gaming on it and having fun that way, I got into creating videos, right? Editing videos, rendering different videos, and I do some of my own film projects right now as a kind of a solo cinematographer. So things need to be edited, right? So it just so happens that because I put the extra money in into getting a computer that could do both, right? So I can not only, it's not only designed for gaming, it can game very, very effectively at very high settings and so on, but it can also do different workloads, right? So editing editing videos just happens to be one of them. So it was such a relief to know that when I did open up the YouTube channel and when I started editing videos, my computer could handle everything that I threw at it, basically. And I throw other things, other different coding things at it too, that it can handle really, really well. I don't have any kind of issues as far as my workload goes, and that's because I put in the extra money for the higher quality, the longer lasting piece of equipment. So those are a few examples of different personal experiences that I've had in my life where I changed the way that I look at purchasing goods and services, especially goods though in this case, where rather than getting the cheap and easy route, I looked at things in the long term, right? I wanted to kind of extend my gaze to see, well, if I purchase this one now, where will I be next year? If I purchase this one now, which is more expensive, where will I be next year? And if usually the comparisons when you put them next to each other, really paints a clear picture of what one's going to be a better investment in the long run. And that's a huge thing that I like to push to people is don't think short term. Try to think as much as you can in the long term. Purchase things that are that you won't have to think about for some time. As I said with the camera, the computer, and my stringer, two of the three, I won't even have to think about upgrading for years probably. And one of the other one, the tennis racket stringer, I'll be able to make money on it, right? And I mean, the same could go for the camera and computer as well. But basically, making the financial commitment to buy the more quality, the longer lasting product, for these three examples is, nothing short but fantastic for, for the foreseeable future for these different endeavors that that I like to take on. So one question that's probably, maybe on the tip of your tongue is, well, Noah, I don't have, or I'm not always in a position to afford the more premium option, right? So I'm not left with a choice but to to get the cheap one, right? And that's completely understandable. That was where I was until I started basically getting on, basically using the financial service that I developed for. Initially, it was just for me, but then I realized that it could be utilized for other individuals as well. So I guess I'd be a fool to not, plug my service within this video here. But basically, coming up with a strong financial plan, right? A good budget, understanding where you are, what needs to be done to get to these different goals, and basically increase the amount of extra money that you're going to have, amount in savings, is going to help you. Make the more premium purchases, right? Buying for the long run rather than the short run, because naturally, buying the more quality product is likely going to be more expensive. So, I don't want to have a shameless, plug here, but, utilizing, these types of services, whether it be through me or through, another individual or company, is a great way to start if you don't think that if you're in a position to really not buy the higher quality good, and you feel like you're stuck in this limbo of always having to buy the cheapest, the cheapest of the cheap. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on how we should spend money throughout holidays and throughout the calendar year. I hope you were able to, kind of apply some of these personal examples that I had to some of the examples that you may have in your life. If you have any personal examples of instances where you paid the premium price, but it ended up being so beneficial for you in the following years, please share those examples in the comment section below. I'd really love to hear them. As always, if you have any questions for me personally, or if you'd like to take a look at the financial services that I can provide to you, I've left my email and a link to my company website in the description box below. Thank you so much for your time today, and happy financing.